if, some of, so please pardon me if some of this is very familiar to some of you. And it might seem repetitive, especially to some of the counselors who are present today. But honestly, the whole premise of having this particular module is to emphasize the fact that unless our assessment is strong, everything else that follows will be weak. So, we have palliative care, the definition also talks about impeccable assessment. And we have talked about the fact that palliative care is an interdisciplinary approach. And it's really important for us to remember that as, we think of medical diagnosis as being really, really important, right? Like if you don't have a proper diagnosis, then you might end up giving the wrong medication, the healing process is badly disrupted, or you can even do harm. The exact same logic applies to psychosocial care as well. And people have a tendency to think that, psychosocial care is a lot more qualitative, it's a lot more subjective, there is less objectivity in that. While that may be true to some extent, that cannot be an excuse for us to compromise on the quality of assessment that we do and the kind of goal setting that we follow. So without delaying any further, I'm just going to get right into it. And let me just share my screen. Oops. What is the keys? Just one second. Okay. So I just like to give credit to some of my colleagues, social workers, Sharat Mohan and Sharat K, who have contributed vastly to the creation of these slides, and they've drawn from their own practice on the field. And together we've created this PowerPoint for you. So it has really taken the work of 3 people. Firstly, I just want to go back to the definition. Like I said, palliative care is an approach that improves the quality of life of patients and their families, very important, facing problems associated with life-threatening illness through the prevention and relief of suffering. So not just the relief of suffering, but also the prevention of suffering by means of early identification and impeccable assessment and treatment of pain and other symptoms and other problems, physical, psychosocial, and spiritual. Now you'll notice that I have highlighted some words, and I have highlighted and underlined some words. Yeah, and I want you to pay attention to what those words are. Quality of life. Quality of life is not something that you can medically diagnose. It is something that takes an interdisciplinary approach to understand. And we've already talked about total pain, right? And how total pain can completely change the experience of an illness, of a disease. And we underscore the fact that it's not just the patient, but also the family that is the unit of care, and the entire family is assessed, not just the patient. And we talk about life-threatening illness, also life-limiting. I want to just add that. And like I said, it's not just about problem solving once the problem is here, but it's also about preventing problems from happening so that the suffering is diminished and the suffering is not exacerbated. And we talk about physical, psychosocial, and spiritual. So again, not something that you can diagnose with a few tests and investigations and a thermometer, but something that you have to bring your presence to. And this is a skill that we hone as we go along with every patient, every family that we encounter. We refine these skills much as a physician would over the course of their practice. Okay, now, why is psychosocial care important? Well, firstly, living with a life-limiting or life-threatening illness, or even the awareness that you are seriously sick and that this might end in death, it has a whole set of unique stressors and challenges that you don't see or you don't experience when there is the absence of illness. Okay, so life-limiting and life-threatening illnesses come with their own unique stressors and challenges. I'm going to stop here for a minute, and I'm just going to check in with the group And what are some of these unique challenges that you see only in times of illness that you won't see at any other time? So what are some of the psychosocial challenges? What are the unique stressors that illness can bring? Please feel free to use the chat box. Feel free to unmute. Yeah. Anybody? What is unique to illness that you don't see in other life experiences? Stigma, yeah, there could be stigma associated with a particular disease or illness. Fear of death, yes. Collusion, absolutely. Collusion is a very big problem, especially in some of our cultures. Feelings of helplessness, yes. Sorry, somebody wanted to say something?
Yeah, Vaishali speaking.
Yes, Vaishali.
So I wanted to say that I think illness can bring the challenge of not having any control over it, because usually we are quite used to having control over a lot of areas of our life. But sometimes when you have a terminal illness, it's like almost all your power is taken away, feeling very helpless.
That's very, very articulately put. Thank you very much. Yeah, so feelings of helplessness, having power taken away from you, completely, at the mercy of the doctors, of the people around you. And that, I mean, I think you've hit upon something really important, because for a lot of people, especially older people who have been in charge of their lives, having that control taken away is one of the most difficult things for them to deal with. And I find that a lot of young carers, like especially people in their 30s or 40s who are looking after older parents, this is a big problem that they have, that the patient is not willing to let go of control, and they're fighting, and that sort of frustration comes out in different parts, right? Like, so they might become stubborn about certain things. And very often I will, if it's a family that I'm seeing, instead of getting frustrated by the stubbornness of parents and so on, I wonder, I explore with them, is there something that is coming through for you? Is there something that the parent is trying to retain control over? They've lost control over everything. So what is it that we can do to make them feel a little bit more empowered, a little bit more in control, give them back a sense of autonomy? Because even decision-making capacity is taken away from people, and that's a big challenge with illness. And I love that the chat box is warming up nicely. Worry about family, collusion, helplessness, financial issues, as we know, is a big problem. Stop working, yeah, losing a job. Stop working, stop contributing meaningfully to society. Not able to accept reality. Yeah, denial is a big one. Being dependent on others, neglect and abuse. Great, I think we've covered everything. So this is what we find that is unique to illness. And of course, with each of these things that all of you have outlined, these are big challenges. None of them are small. And it is our job as clinicians and as an interdisciplinary team to work with these issues, because each of those things that all of you have outlined cause suffering. And palliative care is the mitigation of suffering, isn't it? Serious health-related suffering. So you have beautifully, listed out all these different points. So coming back to the PowerPoint, why is psychosocial care important? Because all of those things that you just talked about, there's no pill that you can give somebody. There's no injection that you can give somebody that will take care of all these different things that you just mentioned. So it is these are psychosocial issues. Understanding the factors related to a patient's quality of life is essential in providing appropriate care. Now, the factors that impact a patient's quality of life, they vary from person to person, right? Now, if I want you to just, I want you to just take a couple of minutes and just reflect on this. This is not something that you necessarily have to share with the group. If you're comfortable sharing with the group, please go ahead. But I want you to definitely reflect on the fact that what is it that contributes to your sense of a good life, okay, that your sense of contentment, your quality of life. And what is it that might be taken away from you that might impact your quality of life negatively? Okay. What to you constitutes good quality of life? Think about it for a few minutes. For some, it might be being around family. For some people, it might be good health. Jinx, Deepa. Then for some people, it might be, for some people, it might be, having a roof over your head, being able to be independent. Some people, it might be the ability to make decisions for yourself, not being controlled by other people. Families, support, health, autonomy. On a day-to-day basis, what constitutes good quality of life? On a day-to-day basis, sleep, good quality sleep, nutritious food, friends, the ability to spend time with your friends, do things that you enjoy, love, care, security, happiness. Yeah. Financial security, very important. Support of family members. Yeah. So if there are 30 people I'm going to ask this question of, I'll get 32 answers of what good quality of life means, right? So there is no formula. I can't say what's good quality of life for me is good quality of life for somebody else. For some people, a good quality of life is the ability to keep traveling, to explore new places constantly. For other people, it's their home. Some people are, like what we call a house mouse. Like you want to be at home. Your idea of comfort is to go back to the comfort of your own safety and comfort zone. So sports, yeah, okay. The ability to play sports. So good quality of life is very different for different people. And for me to really understand what contributes to a good quality of life of my patients, I need to sit down with them. I need to spend time with them, and I need to listen to their stories of what good quality of life means to them. There has to be something called a social diagnosis. And what is a social diagnosis? A social diagnosis is an understanding of psychological, biological, social, environmental factors that are operating on the person in his particular situation. All those different things that are acting on him are operating on him in that moment, where he is in terms of, in terms of his psychological well-being. How is he with the environment? How is he with other people? How do people perceive him? There are so many different things. And when a person is diagnosed with a serious illness, it definitely disrupts their thoughts and feelings, their relationships, their social and spiritual supports, and their financial stability and sense of spirituality. So basically every aspect of your life. And even the way you think and the way you feel about things changes drastically. So again, there is no intravenous infusion you can give to sort these kind of things out. You have to be able to sit down and understand what the psychosocial elements are in that person's life. Now, we have talked about total pain. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but just to remind you that total pain is basically, the compounded impact of suffering that a person is experiencing. And the pain that they experience, whether it's physical or not, is compounded by their life circumstances. And whatever suffering that a person is experiencing, you cannot look at it in a vacuum. You have to look at what's going on in the person's life that's contributing to it. And as a clinician, my responsibility is to see what those different contributing factors are. What is it that is making this patient feel worse than they would have otherwise felt? What is it that I can take away that will make them feel better? What is it that I can add that might help them feel better? Totally. Okay, so that's total pain, just as a quick reminder. And this is the total pain grid, right? There are 4 quadrants. There's physical, psychological, socioeconomic, and spiritual. And whenever we are assessing somebody's sense of well-being, we are looking at all these different factors. Now, what is the aim of assessment? One, it's to identify problems which result from illness. What is it that has emerged as a result of this person being diagnosed with this particular disease? And what are these factors that might be playing on their sense of well-being? And assessment is not just an art, it's also a science. And you have to collect information. And what you do with the information, I mean, there are several things that you do with the information, right? What are the different reasons you're collecting this information? You have to be very clear about that. And also, not just try to problem solve, but to identify and honor strengths, resources, and the needs of the person. So we're not just looking at the negative aspect. When you are doing an assessment of the patient and the family, also look for the strengths, look for the positives, because you are going to need to rely on, you're going to need those things in order to bolster this person, right? So let me just ask you, what are the various reasons you're collecting data and information? What are the various reasons? Is it just curiosity? No. There are very specific reasons you are gathering information about somebody, right? So what are some of the things that you might be looking for when you are gathering information? Understand the patient's condition. Anything else? I gave you a few clues in that last slide. We'll come back to that. But I just want to understand from you, what are some of the things that you want to learn about a person as you assess them? And the word assess has a little bit of a judgy quality to it, I feel, but but at the same time, it's also for us to, patient's relationship with the family, psychological state, financial condition, social, financial background, mental state. Great. I love how there's always this little lull and then the inbox gets flooded. Okay, great. Yeah. So we're all on the right track. These are various reasons why we're gathering this information. Okay. And so we collect this information. We also understand what the strengths are of that person. And we have to remember that assessment and the gathering of information is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time thing. It's not like I meet you and then that's it. I'm going to get all the information from you and then I'm going to work on that information for the remaining time that I am interacting with you. No, I have got to constantly assess and evaluate the situation, and reassess and reevaluate the situation. And very importantly, the selection of goals and interventions depends largely on what you are assessing. If you miss something in your assessment, there's no way you can set a goal or an intervention, right? So the goals you set, the intervention modality, the treatment modality that you end up with has to do with what you have assessed in the first place. If I'm a doctor, I cannot treat you for a liver disease if I've not even assessed your liver, right? It's as simple as that. So the psychosocial needs of patients and family caregivers often change. I wouldn't say often, I would say they would change over the course of illness. So as the illness progresses, the needs change of both the patient and the family. And we're going to look at that. Okay, now, who are your sources of information? Obviously the patient and their caregivers, but also collateral sources like friends, relatives, neighbors, and like we talked about it in the first session, home visits. Some of you did mention that, a home visit is not always possible, and I respect that. But a complete assessment ideally is done when you assess the home setting. And like I said, if you're not able to physically go and assess the home setting, ask the kind of questions that will paint that picture more vividly for you, so that through your questions, open-ended questions, and we're going to be talking about communication down the line. Excuse me. So ask the kind of questions that will tell you what this person's home life is like, and that will give you a complete picture. Okay. especially with patients who are in our care for extended periods of time. Very often we get to know their friends, relatives, and neighbors, and their sense of well-being has a lot to do with all these different important people in their lives. Okay. Now, we talked about who the sources are. Now, what are the different areas that we're going to assess? It's not a short list. Firstly, we're going to get a general overview of the patient and the family, who they are, what has the treatment journey been like, who's in the family, things like that. So an overview, large overview. We are going to assess their insight. How much do they know about the illness, about their diagnosis? We're going to talk about that also in a moment. what is the insight, the level of insight that they have about their illness. And this is very, very important, because you have to work with the person's perception. You have to understand what the person understands. Only then can you proceed to have a conversation with them, right? You cannot assume that everybody knows everything about their illness. That's very rarely the case. We need to know what is the structure of the family, who's in the family. We also need to know how they interact with one another, because that's really important. We need to know the socioeconomic status, of course, because as we know, the financial impact of illness has a huge bearing on the sense of well-being of a person. We need to assess their environment. Where are they situated? What kind of environment do they live in? Is it, and by environment, I mean several things. I mean, of course, the physical environment in terms of, access, hygiene, infrastructure, those kind of things, but also the environment in terms of their social environment. Like some of you mentioned, stigma. What is the social environment that they're experiencing? Do they have support? Okay, is there conflict? Is there hostility in the environment? What are the kinds of psychological distress that they might be experiencing? What has been the spiritual impact on them of this illness? Psychosexual issues, big one. And I think one of the most under explored areas. We're not comfortable talking about sex. We're not comfortable talking about intimacy. But it is such a vital part of a person's sense of well-being. And we need to understand, how has the disease and the illness impacted their psychosocial issues? I mean, has it raised any psychosocial issues? And of course, after we do all of this, we then sit down and figure out what are some of the interventions and plans that we need to make in order to really be able to assist this person in the best way that we can. Okay, so these are different areas, and we're just going to go into them in a little bit more detail as we go along. Okay, so when you are assessing a patient and the family in terms of getting their overview, you need their basic demographic details. Okay, you also need to understand things like what was their occupation, or what is their occupation? What is the source of income? Were they working? Are they working even now? Who is the primary caregiver? And what is the relationship between the patient and the primary caregiver? It's not always the son, the daughter, the husband, the wife. Very often, especially in our Indian setting, it'll be the daughter-in-law, and somebody who's not even really close to the in-laws in that sense. We've seen so many different cases where a young woman has just married into a family. She's educated, she's working, and she's married into the family. One of the in-laws falls sick. She becomes the primary caregiver. And we're going to be talking about these kind of roles as we go along, in the series as well. But I just want to mention that 80% of caregivers globally are women. And that's a global statistic. So who is the caregiver? What is the relationship? And so that's the kind of overview, because then you understand who is it that you're going to be seeing most often, who are you going to get that information from most often. So if the primary caregiver very often is also your primary source of information, right? And that's why that dynamic is really important. If, for instance, it's a spouse, then you might get different information than if the primary caregiver is an attendant, right? Or if it's like I said, if it's a new daughter-in-law, they may not be, the kind of information that you get varies depending on who your primary caregiver is. And so those kind of details are really important. Now, what I mean by insight is the patient as well as the family. Do they know about their diagnosis? Do they know what the diagnosis is? Do they know the prognosis? And do they understand what palliative care is? Okay, I'm just going to let you just spend a minute focusing on this. We need to understand what the patient understands of their diagnosis, what they understand of their prognosis, and what they understand of palliative care. And this applies to both the patient and the family. Now, Is it enough that I know my diagnosis? Is it enough? Okay. I might know the name of my disease. It has some fancy name. But do I know what that means? Do I know what it means on a day-to-day basis? I might know that I have melanoma. Have I been explained like what melanoma means? Okay. So I find it fascinating and very poignant that very quickly patients and their families will pick up the vocabulary of the disease. You talk to a caregiver, they'll rattle off all those scientific terms and medical terms and biological terms and all of that. They'll know all of those things because they've had to learn it really quickly, right? You ask them to break it down for you. What does it really mean? Sometimes they get stuck. So, do they understand what the diagnosis means? Do they know what the prognosis is? Now, this is a very tricky thing, huh? I want you to just focus on this for a bit. I might know that my prognosis is that it is a very serious illness. My doctor has told me, my family has told me. It's a different matter altogether whether I accept that prognosis. I might be in complete denial of my prognosis. Or I might be overly anxious when my prognosis is not that bad. So it's one thing to know the prognosis, it's another thing how I feel about that prognosis. So oftentimes I'll see, a case note which will say, yeah, family knows, patient knows diagnosis, patient knows prognosis. Patient knows prognosis, patient has not accepted it. Okay, so please be very, very mindful of that. It's not enough that they know the name of the disease. They need to understand what that disease translates to in terms of their day-to-day life. It's not just enough that they know what the prognosis is. Have they accepted it? Do they have realistic expectations or do they have unrealistic expectations? Are they hoping for a miracle? Those kind of things. Very, very important. And very important for us working in palliative care. Do they know what palliative care is? And if they do know what palliative care is, do they understand it in the way that we understand it? I was having a conversation with a very, very dear friend yesterday. And she said to me, she's come down from Netherlands. Her father's been in and out of illness for like 2 years, slowly deteriorating. Now the deterioration is rapid. She's in a very prestigious hospital in Bangalore. And the father is in some level of discomfort. They're pushing for the father is 80 years old. They're pushing for another transplant. And she said, I don't know about this transplant and stuff. And then it's his second transplant. So she asked the doctor, she said, how many patients have you done a second transplant for? The answer they got was not many. Why not? Because people either are demotivated by their first transplant or it's too expensive. So that was one conversation. And she got that information when she asked that question. But then she said, if we choose not to go for the transplant, can we start talking about palliative care? And here the response she got was, we're not there yet. Why are you giving up hope? Now, this is a huge misconception that the medical fraternity also harbors, that opting for palliative care means you're opting out of active treatment and it is a last resort. There's nothing beyond it. So oftentimes families will come to you and their understanding of palliative care is very different from what you might think. They might think that they're terminally sick, or that death is going to happen next week, or they might have unrealistic expectations because they've never heard about palliative care. And again, I've had this experience where I was working in a children's hospital, and it was in a cancer hospital, and I was very young. I was 22, 23 years old. I was an intern. And I remember being completely overwhelmed by the children's ward. And on my lunch break, I was sitting outside just trying to, compose myself. And this young father came up to me and he said, he held out a chit to me. He said, "Do you work here?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know this place?" And he showed me this chit which said the name of a hospice. And I said, "Yeah, I know this place." So he said, "Well, is it a good hospital?" And I said, "It's not a hospital, it's a hospice." So he said, "What does that mean?" I said, I said, before I tell you, about that, like, why are you showing me this chit? He said, "No, the doctor here said that I should just take my son here, his 8-year-old son." That was it. There was no information. So this man has basically thought that he is being referred to another hospital by this doctor with zero understanding of why he's being referred. At which point it fell upon me to say, they'll take really good care of him. So they've cured many children, is what he asked me. I said, "No, they don't cure, they provide supportive care."
Smriti ma'am?
This experience with this child. And finally, it fell upon me to explain to the father what a palliative care unit was and what the hospice was. And I will never forget his face when he looked at me and he said, "Basically, what you're saying to me is my son is going to die." And of course, I was very new, I was very young, and I said, "No, no, 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 that's not what I'm saying." He said, "No, but that's what you're saying." And he was so upset. He was so upset. And I thought I'd obviously made all the mistakes of communication. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But what I really felt bad about was the fact that this man had just been given a chit. He didn't understand what palliative care was. His expectations were entirely different from what was being recommended. So it's really, really important before you sit down with the patient and the family and start getting into goal setting and stuff. What is it do they understand about palliative care? What expectation have they come with? And let's gently set those expectations and manage those expectations, make them realistic without taking away their hope. And of course, that's very difficult to do sometimes, but that's why we have sessions in communication, later in the course. Okay, so I'm going to stop my video, Raju.
Sure, ma'am.
All right. I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable again. I'm very sorry about it. All right, so patient and family overview, insight, and now we also have to understand family structure and dynamics. And for that, we have this very, very handy tool called the genogram, which I'm sure that many of you are familiar with, but just for the sake of going over basics one more time, we will explore that in a little bit more detail. And we also need to understand the history of illness in the family and what the experience has been like for the family in the past, and also the history of this particular illness. Before they came to you, where all did this family go? What was their experience? Did they experience, were they treated with respect? Were they treated kindly? Were they given the right kind of information? Were they just told what to do without question? And how does the family as a whole deal with that? Now let's look at the genogram a little bit in detail. Okay, the genogram is basically what we call a family tree. And it was something that was created by Murray Bowen. And basically a genogram is a graphical representation of a person's family over at least 3 generations. Okay, 3 generations. There's a tendency for people to just draw the nuclear family, but a real genogram has to go 3 generations. And what this genogram is going to tell us is the structure of the family, the dynamics within the family, what are the family's strengths and what are the family's resources. And the kind of information that you're going to put on the genogram includes the name of each of these people, if you can get it, the age of each of these people, if possible, education, occupational profile, and also emotional relationships. Now, how do we do this? If you just get on the internet, you're going to find various symbols that are universally used. And you're welcome to actually, figure out which ones, these are your standard symbols. You have squares for males, circles for women, for female, one line like this is married, one line across is separated, a double line means divorce. Okay. You also have for children, you have various different symbols, and sorry, excuse me. And basically you put these all together to represent the family. Now, you also have to show emotional relationships, and emotional relationships, in my experience and in my opinion, is actually the really important in the genogram. Okay. Most people just end up showing the structure: father, mother, children, grandparents, uncles, aunts, etc. But by looking at that, I don't know what the relationship is like. So for that, you have these kind of symbols that you can use. Okay. And again, I will encourage you to go online, look at the different kinds of symbols people have used for genograms. And one thing that I will really encourage you is to ensure that every person in your team reads a genogram the same way. You can't have 3 people reading the genogram in 3 different ways. So always have a legend drawn at the bottom. Now let's see how we can put this to use. Okay, so yeah, this is just one more. You can keep on adding as many different dynamics as you want. Okay, and I'll be sharing this PowerPoint with you, so you'll be able to look at this in more detail. But a lot of the psychologists on this call today will also understand why these kind of simple symbols are really important. Now, here, for instance, is a genogram with just the structure. Okay. Would anyone like to interpret this genogram? The shaded lines means this is the patient. X across means that the person is deceased. Would anyone like to attempt to interpret this?
May I try, Smriti? I'm not very sure.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think Shaji is the son of Kumaran and Laila. Both of them are not in this world now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And Sindhu is the daughter of Mohan and Leela. And Sindhu is the one who is the patient now, right? And they have twins, Amal and Vimal.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't understand the last part, like Sindhu and Raju, that I didn't understand.
Anybody? That's great. You've got it. Anybody wants to just
I think Saji and Sindhu, they are husband and wife.
Yeah.
And they have got a twin, Amal and Bimal.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe Saran is a foster child. Raju ka coolie worker. Raju is no longer there, one coolie worker. They have a foster child who is Saran.
Right.
No, all right. No, that's a good attempt. That's a very good attempt, Preeti.
Can I?
Yes. Yeah, go for it.
I think Sindhu was earlier married to Raju. They have a son together, Sharan. And once Raju died, Sindhu got married to Shajar, I think.
That's right. So Sindhu this is her second marriage. Okay. Now, what is this genogram not telling you? What's
the relationship?
Yeah. It's not
the relationship between Shaji or the children or
Mhm.
even her
Uh,
mother.
Occupation of Sindhu is not given.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, occupation of Sindhu is not given.
Emotion.
Emotional,
The illnesses.
emotional relation is not given.
Yeah. So we don't know how they are with one another, right? We
Yeah.
don't know where Sharan is
The
now.
dynamics.
Yeah. We don't know we don't know what's going on with Sharan apart from the fact that he's in 11th standard. We don't know what's going on with Leela. We don't know his Shaji's relationship with Sharan. He is a stepson from another marriage, right? We don't know now that the mother, who is the center of all of this, now that she's sick, what's going on with do these kids know each other? Do they get along? We don't know any of that. Okay, so not enough. Here is a genogram with the same family redrawn by one of our social workers. Now, I'm going to go back to this one, right? We have the names, we have the ages of two people, 3 people, 4, 5. Okay, now, who would like to help me with this? Let me just go back also. Let's very quickly go back to the emotional relationships. Okay, look at this. Pay attention to close friendship, very close, intimate relationship, hostility and violence, neglect, emotional abuse. Okay, all right. Okay, now that we've looked at this again, now let's go to this. Would anyone like to try and interpret this?
Sindhu's two sisters, Indu and Bindu, share a very close relationship with her.
Yes,
And Sindhu is very close to her son, the elder son from the first marriage, Sarath.
yes.
Also, Shaji's sibling, Subhash, and his wife don't share a very good relationship with him. They are hostile to him.
Yeah.
And Shaji is hostile towards Sarath, the
Sure.
child from the first marriage.
All right.
And the kids, they seem to sort of, if it's in black only, so I don't know whether it means they have some sort of friendship or a good
No, it's a
relationship.
friendship close. Yeah, it's like Vimal
Normal
and Sharath, I think, yeah, are close, right? I don't know.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And just to let you know, the circle tells you who all live together.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what can you tell me about this family? What I mean, does this make a difference? All right. Now, why am I insisting on a genogram? Because I personally hate taking 3-4 pages of notes. And sorry, I'm going to stop my video. Yeah, so sorry, my camera's off. But I personally hate taking pages and pages of notes, okay? And I find it very distracting when you're talking to somebody and they're scribbling notes in their book. So if I have to really sit down and pay attention mindfully to a conversation, I cannot be sitting and writing 10,000 details on a notepad. At the same time, I might have a 1 hour long conversation with somebody. And if I don't take notes, I'm not going to remember anything at the end of that 1 hour. I might forget some very vital details. A genogram is a brilliant way to take down essential information. And the beautiful thing about a genogram is that you can get really creative with it. I find it very, I actually enjoy putting genograms together now. And the best part is if your whole team can read the genogram in the same way, then everybody reads that genogram and it's like a snapshot of the family. It's almost like a photograph of the family.
Smriti ma'am,
Yeah, can you hear me now?
your voice is a bit breaking. Ma'am.
Okay, so moving along. Is my screen visible, Raju?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. Now, here's another exciting thing called an eco map. Less well known than a genogram, but for the purpose of palliative care, total pain evaluation, I find eco maps to be extremely useful. Now, if a genogram is a pictorial representation of the family, the eco map is a pictorial representation of a patient's family in its social environment and the family's relationship with the larger society. And this was created by a lady called Anne Hartman. It is a snapshot view of important interactions of patients' family with social systems, with other systems. So other groups, extended family, individuals, organizations, associations. Now, what am I talking about? Let me make it a little more clear. No family exists in a vacuum. A family has relationships with the children's school, with their own friends, with neighbors, with religious institutions, with their own extended family, with the health services, with their workplace. You know, so the caregiver might work in a organization that is very supportive, that gives him time off to take care of the patient's needs, so on and so forth. The school might also be very understanding if the child is not well, and they might actually go out of their way to try and educate and sensitize the other children so that the child who is not well fits in better. Many families, of course, rely very heavily on their religious faith groups, their congregations at church, their satsang group, you know, things like that. And of course, health services. Do they have a reliable doctor? Do they have, you know, what is their relationship with the health service been? And what are the local services, like especially for families from poor socio-economic backgrounds? Do they have members of the panchayat who are supportive of them? Do they have ASHA workers coming around? Do they have Anganwadi workers in the area? Do they have access to health services in the primary health center? So various things. So every family, the sense of well-being also has to do with their relationship with the larger environment within which they exist. Now, this is a very westernized eco map, okay? You have the family in the middle, Adam and Louise, and they have two sons. They have a daughter and a son, Michelle and Greg. And as a family, this is their interactions with a larger group. So again, look at the box, which tells you positive, tenuous. Tenuous means strained, stressful. And the arrows tells you which way the energy is flowing. Always when there's an interaction between two people or, you know, two sets of people, there is a flow of energy between them, right? Hostility from one to the other, or camaraderie between the two, whatever it is. And the thickness of the line will tell you exactly how important these relationships are. Now, let me start you off. Louise and the son Greg obviously have a very strong religious affiliation, and they rely heavily on their church. Okay, Michelle, not so much. Michelle seems to have, her interest lies with sports and her, you know, her sports teams and so on. And she's also getting a college sports scholarship. Greg has also, he relies heavily on his counselor and a mental health specialist. Greg has a small group of friends, and they spend a lot of time playing computer games and so on. So you have Adam, who has a reciprocal relationship with all his buddies who go drinking and fishing and all of that. Those guys don't like the wife. You can see a hostile arrow coming from all of Adam's friends towards the wife. Not an uncommon scenario. Okay. And Adam also has a good relationship with his workplace. Yeah. Now, I'm just going to Indianize this a little bit, okay? I've also brought in here panchayat member, neighbors, the local community volunteer who visits them often, the youth organization who the younger daughter has a lot of interaction with. Yeah. Public health center and the patient, who is the wife, not such a great relationship. She doesn't get a lot of care from them. The husband relies lots on his colleagues. Okay. Now, do you find this to be a useful, tool of assessment? How will you use this information? What is this? What are these eco maps telling us really? What are these eco maps telling us? You as a healthcare provider, or you as a care provider or a mental health worker, what is this going to tell you? How is this going to help you? Anyone?
It gives the support systems outside the family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, relationship with the larger community.
Social
but-
dynamics.
Sorry, social dynamics.
Social dynamics of the family.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's also telling you where you as a healthcare provider can leverage help for yourself. You can't visit this family at home, right? You can't go visit them every week, but you know that there's a volunteer who goes there. You might say, okay, now this family might be under financial burden. They might have mortgaged their house. They can no longer afford rent. And what this tells you is that the panchayat member is not very helpful. So maybe someone from your team can have a chat with the panchayat member and help them understand that, you need to support this family a little bit. Maybe the panchayat member doesn't know the stress that this family is going through. You know that their faith is really important to them as a family. So you will work with that to improve the person's sense of well-being. You know where that family finds solace and comfort. Yeah, you know that the school is supportive. Maybe you'll have a chat with them about the children because the mother is not well. Maybe you'll have a chat with the teachers, right? Maybe you know that this young boy is really keen on college. And what happens if they lose money and he loses that college, college education? He'll be devastated. So what can we do to improve this, to make sure that he doesn't drop out of college, right? And the public health center doesn't seem to be of much help. So what can we do there? Now, obviously, the husband has a good relationship with his colleagues. Maybe, to get some respite from being the primary caregiver, we can ensure that he goes and he spends some time with his colleagues just to get a break, or his friends. So and then you know that the neighbors are not helpful. There's a hostile relationship with the neighbors. So you cannot rely on the neighbors. Okay, now I'm just going to go back also to the genogram. Okay, because here, knowing that there is hostility between this man, Shaji, and the son from the previous marriage, also tells us that there is tension at home. This relationship of hostility, especially because Sindhu is particularly close to Sharat, this relationship must be worrying her, no? If she's sick, she must be worried that if something happens to me, what's going to happen to Sharat? Because the father is not supportive. Yeah, the 13-year-old twins are great friends with him. But this relationship is worrying. We also know that if they have any financial burden and crisis, you can forget about getting any help from Shaji's brother. Yeah. But you can also somehow facilitate that Sindhu gets to spend more time with her sisters. So there's a lot of information packed into this. And what it really gives you is even more, I don't want to use the word ammunition, but it really gives you a lot of avenues to explore, to increase support to these families. So, which is why even though the genogram and the EcoMap are such basic tools, I think they're very, very powerful tools. And I really encourage people to start using them more regularly. Okay, now I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on the caregiver. And this is a beautiful quote by Rosalind Carter, who says, there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need a caregiver. That's all of us. So the role of caregiving is so important. But very often the caregiver becomes what we call the invisible patient. They become invisible because the focus is on the patient with the disease. And very often I find that the caregiver really gets sidelined or doesn't get spoken to very nicely. Everybody's always focused on the patient. It's really important for us to not just respect them in our heads, but also to demonstrate that respect and to acknowledge as often as possible how difficult that role must be for them. You win over the caregiver, you give them the support they need, things become a lot better. And we have this really ugly word in our healthcare dictionary, which is called the bystander. It's a terrible word. The word bystander, which is used so often in hospitals it's used interchangeably with the word attendant, right? It's a bystander. But the word bystander, by a very definition, means somebody who stands by and does nothing, which is the exact opposite of a caregiver, if you ask me. So let's also not dehumanize people by calling them bystanders. Caregivers have a ringside view to the fight. They are very often on the front lines of the fight. And so let's give them that respect. And how do you give them their respect? Ask them their names. Ask them how they are. How has this illness been for them? What have they had to give up in order to fulfill the role that they are occupying now? So those kind of things, just a little bit of, bolstering them really goes a long way. And it's been very, and if you try this out, so often bystanders, so-called bystanders, caregivers, are so shocked when you ask them their name. A lot of them have never been asked who they are. Okay, now in part of the assessment, we're also assessing socioeconomic status. Do they have adequate food, clothing, and shelter? Who is the breadwinner and who controls the finances? Okay, what is their source of income? Do they have any debts that they have to pay? What kind of social support is available to them by means of government schemes, local financial support? And what is the status of education of their children? All of these are very practical issues, a huge source of distress to many people, because these right here also define your quality of life. Okay. Oops. Okay. Then environmental assessment. If you can visit them, great. See what kind of house they own. I mean, what kind of living arrangement do they have? Do they own their house? Is it a rented house? Is it a kacha house? Basically, it's not like a solid house. Is it in need of repair? Especially in places where you have extreme weather conditions and so on. This is a huge source of distress. In Kerala, as many of you know, we have a lot of rain. And if you have a leaky roof in a place where you have a patient who is bedbound, it can be very distressing. So sometimes that needs attention. Position of the patient in the house. Is it an overcrowded house? Does the patient have any space? Is there ventilation in the room that they're in? Is there light? Is there natural light? Especially if the person is bedbound. Do they have any natural light? These kind of things make a big difference to the person's sense of well-being. Do the family have a decent kitchen? How is their waste disposed? What kind of hygiene levels do they have? Is there a lot of smoke in the kitchen, and does that impact the person's health? Do they have water supply issues? And this is a big thing, and our social workers will also tell you that very often this is a huge source of distress, especially when the source of water is far away. So if you have a caregiver who's at home looking after the patient day in, day out, but they have to walk half a kilometer to go and get water every time water is needed, then that's an additional source of distress. And there are many, many times when we have actually worked with the local panchayat to ensure that the family has a steady water supply. And access, do they have access to the main road, to the hospital? Do they have access to the pharmacy, to groceries? Who does the shopping? How far do they have to go? When the person who is the caregiver, do they have to go and pick up medication and groceries? What happens when that person goes out? Who is there to look after the patient at that point? These are all questions that if you ask them, and it'll give you a good sense of what their home life is like. I'm sorry, I seem to have missed a question, Maria. The colors in the eco-map are just colors to make the eco-map more interesting for me. They're not codified in any particular way. So it's just to brighten things up a little bit. Do they have access to fruits and vegetables? Absolutely, that's really important. To nutritious food. Yeah, if they're going to be taking all that medication, do they have food? Okay. Psychological distress, those of you who are psychologists here in this group know how important this is. What is their general sense of well-being, emotional well-being? Are they anxious? Are they depressed? Are they panicky? What sort of coping mechanisms have they utilized in the past? Do they have people that they can lean on for support? And are they experiencing something called anticipatory grief? We will talk about that in more detail when we do the module on grief. But a quick assessment. Now, not all of us are able to do a mental health assessment in detail, but certainly at least we must be able to do a basic assessment of what the person is experiencing. And spiritual assessment, when this is not something that everybody is really comfortable with, but let me just break it down for you. It can be done through a very, very simple method. Now, when we are assessing spirituality, these are the 4 domains we're looking at: their sense of feeling connected, connection, their strengths, and what brings them comfort. What are their hopes and concerns, and what gives them a sense of purpose and meaning? Now, these might seem like very, very abstract concepts, but here's something for you. This is a spiritual assessment tool that I find very, very useful, and this is the source. At the bottom right of the screen, right? And anyway, you can access this even on the PowerPoint that I'll be sharing with you. Now, in order to assess their sense of connection, here are some questions. Who are the persons or communities you look to for support? What role do they have in your care? Do you have an image of a power greater than yourself? So the sense of connection is not just with people, it's also with a higher power. It's also with their general state in their lives, and their sense of connection also to themselves. Okay, how do you feel about yourself? Meaning and joy. And what has been the most important in your life? What are you thankful for? What makes you happy? Things like that. Strengths and comfort. Is there anything that is comforting to you right now through this experience of illness? What has helped you in difficult times in the past? Who is your source of strength? Hopes and concerns. Is there anything that you hope for? Is there anything that feels unfinished? Now, I just want to highlight a couple of things. This is not a checklist of questions that you will ask. I'm going to encourage you to try and weave this into the conversation that you have with your patients and families. Okay, these are really important questions because very often when a person falls seriously sick, it's very easy to slip into a negative state of mind. I will also say that, this idea of toxic positivity, we say, be positive, everything will be great. That doesn't work. But here are some ways in which you can reframe their mindset, refocus their mind. Now, if somebody is feeling down and out and feeling beaten down and defeated, if you ask them, what do you feel proudest of in your life? There is a mental shift. It immediately takes them to a place where they have something good has happened. Right? Is there anything that is comforting to you right now? You might get an answer saying nothing is comforting. Okay. You've obviously, this is not the first difficult thing you've gone through in your life. You've gone through tough times before. What helped you then? So this spiritual assessment tool is not just a good way to get the information that you want, but it's also a great way to build rapport and also to help reframe the person's emotional, sense of being. So I will also encourage you to use the spiritual assessment tool. Obviously, you have to build that kind of rapport with a person, but some of these questions themselves can be used as rapport building questions. So see which part of your conversation some of these questions might best fit in. Don't try and have all these questions answered in one session. It's not going to happen. Okay. Psychosexual issues. Oh, very uncomfortable topic, but and not everybody wants to have this conversation. But it helps, especially when you have, we have a lot of families where somebody has suffered a spinal cord trauma and the young spouse is the caregiver. It has left them with no sexual intimacy. And there's no one talking to them about it. And also sometimes, it's like an arranged marriage, young couple of months into the wedding, into the marriage, he's had an accident. That's it. She's going to be his caregiver for life. No real opportunity to have even developed a sense of intimacy with the person. She probably went into that marriage with a lot of hopes and aspirations, right? All shot down. Who is she talking to? Who can she talk to? So I will ask you to please do look into this and very, as gently as you can broach the subject. And I find that sometimes with difficult conversations, a straightforward method is really best. Earn that person's trust, build rapport, and sit down and, in a supportive way, ask this question. You're not here to fix the problem. You're not here to, there are problems that many of us just cannot fix. But sometimes, especially difficult conversations around sexual intimacy, it really helps the person a great deal to know that they can speak to somebody about it. Okay, so once you have done all those assessments, family overview, assessment of socioeconomic status, their basic needs, food, shelter, water, clothing, all of those things, their social support systems, their spiritual assessment, as well as their psychosocial assessment. Now is when, you also sit down and figure out what are the interventions that would be most useful. There could be supportive counseling for some people. In some cases, all they really need is information. The lack of information in our healthcare system is unbelievable. Very, very often, families are navigating a very difficult terrain of illness with very, very little information. A lot of people do not feel that they can ask questions. They cannot ask questions. They have to do what they're told by the healthcare system. And very often there are huge gaps in their understanding. And so information is a very, very powerful thing. So very often it's information that the person needs. You liaison. Connect them to other people that might provide the support that they need. Regular follow-ups is very important. Rehabilitation, whether it's vocational rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation, facilitation. Our role sometimes is to facilitate and get them in touch with other people who are probably going through the same thing. Facilitate access to medicine. Facilitate access to healthcare, facilitate access to education. So there are various levels of interventions that are for psychosocial care that you can work on. Okay, I'm going to just quickly rush through because we also have something else that we need to present you. Now, very, very important. Assessing psychosocial and spiritual suffering is not just a long, rambling conversation. It is full of purposeful observation and purposeful conversation. Very often I hear the word, oh, I just sat with them and allowed them to ventilate their feelings. That doesn't do anything. You have to have a purpose as to why you're having this conversation. It's not just morbid curiosity. Make sure that the questions you're asking have a purpose. If you're asking them for their time, respect their time. The information that you gather has to mean something. And at the end of it, the stuff that they're sharing with you should in some way help you to assist them. So it has to be purposeful. Please don't make it a rambling sort of interaction with them. Okay. And very word of caution, inaccurate and incomplete assessment will without fail lead to inappropriate goals and interventions. Okay. So half-baked assessment, incomplete assessment, mindless assessment is basically going to lead to inappropriate goals and interventions. So we have to be very careful about what we're assessing and why. Okay, I'm not going to get into a case study because we have somebody else who's also presenting for us. But I want to just spend a few minutes on stages of bereavement support, because our assessment does not only end with, you know, when the person comes to us, and it doesn't end when the person dies. There is a once you've built that relationship with the family, it is our duty to continue to provide support to the family even after the patient has died. And this is very important. There are, when you first encounter the patient and the family, okay, you have your initial intake and assessment, which is all of these things that I talked about, right? But there is also a time when there is imminent death, when you know that the person has a terminal illness. You have to assess the family again at this point. Things have changed. Remember what I said, that as the trajectory of the illness moves ahead, the needs of the family and the patient will change. So if you know that it's a terminal phase, that the disease has advanced, you have to do another assessment at that point. On the day of the death, you need to be present. You need to quickly assess the situation and see how the family is doing. That is also a kind of assessment. And once the person has died, I would strongly recommend that you follow up 2 weeks after the death. Why 2 weeks? Because the immediate funeral and everything is over, the prayer services have been arranged, etc., etc. There is some level of social support at that point. And finally, 1 month after the death. Why 1 month later? Because the noise has died down, the relatives have left. This is where the person really starts to experience the loss on a day-to-day level. Okay. And so I will be talking to you more about bereavement later. And we're going to be doing a whole session on grief and bereavement. So I'm not going to go into it right now. And I just want to end with the last couple of slides. It's very important for us to always, always, always remember that dignity is really, really important. Throughout the process of assessment, please be very mindful of honoring the person's dignity and the personhood. And this is what we say in palliative care. We are not treating a disease. We are working with a person. Okay? And always remember that there is a person behind the illness. And the sense of dignity that a person has is very important. Somebody talked about loss of control. Loss of dignity is one of the biggest things in illness. Because suddenly you're a pincushion, everybody's coming and jabbing you and assessing you and all of those things. So it's very easy to lose sight of the person when somebody is sick. Okay. And here are just some pictures of what psychosocial assessment can do. We had a patient who had a life-threatening condition. We weren't sure how long he would survive, but one of his wishes was to celebrate his wedding anniversary with his wife, even though it was not yet time. His wedding anniversary was going to be in a few months, but he wasn't sure if he's going to be around in a few months. So he said, I just want to celebrate my anniversary with her one more time. So we facilitated that. For a lot of people, vocational rehabilitation, I think I shared a couple of these photos with you in the first presentation, but this, you know, what gives a person a sense of meaning and purpose and being meaningfully engaged, even though they are not well. For a lot of people, it's to be able to contribute at least to the earnings of the household. Support for children. Very often children get sidelined because all the attention is on the patient. What happens to the healthy children in the family? Who's talking to them? Who's unpacking all the difficult emotions? So we try and provide that kind of support for children as well. And always remember, no matter what intervention you arrive at, whatever goal you arrive at, evaluate it. Evaluate if this is the right intervention for this person and this family. See exactly how the patient and the family are benefited. Don't just do something for the sake of it and say, I helped the family. See if that was actually the help they wanted. Just like medical practice, in psychosocial care, good documentation is absolutely invaluable. You have to document your interventions. You have to document your goals of care. You have to document your evaluation. And wherever possible, use research validated techniques, whether they are assessment scales, whatever it might be. And just remember that, like medicine, there's an art and science in psychosocial care as well. So I'm going to stop with that and hand over to Emil.
Thank you, Smriti ma'am, for that wonderful presentation. So we can move on to our case presentation element. So you will get an idea about how a case should be presented. So today we have Emil joining us. He's a social worker working with Pallium India right now. Over to you, Emil.
Hi, good evening all. Today I am here to present a case on a 7-year-old boy, a boy child who is diagnosed with cerebral palsy, hypothyroidism and seizure disorder. This is a medical history of the child. During the birth, the umbilical cord was wrapped around the child's neck, and the child was choked for some minutes. Early interventions were taken, but it was not very successful. Now physiotherapy is being done for the patient, and the aunt and father says that it is being helpful for the child. The child is completely bedbound. He's 7 years old, and he only weighs 6.5 kg, that is underweight, and his food intake is also very low. Currently, he is from treatment from SIT Hospital, Trivandrum. About the insight, we are not able to assess the insight of the child because we are connected to the child with telemedicine. So we don't know about the patient's insight on diagnosis, prognosis, and palliative care, but we know about the family's insight. All the family members know about the diagnosis. About the prognosis, all the family members except the mother accepts the prognosis. The mother still believes that there is a chance for full recovery for the child. Also, they knew something about palliative care, that it is related to bedridden patients and all. Now we have explained to them about our services and palliative care. This is the family overview of the child. The child is denoted with the letter P at the bottom, you can see, and there's an arrow next to the child square, just to know that he is our patient. And we can see there is a miscarriage for the child's mother. And the child's mother, J is half shaded. Half shaded means there is a suspected psychiatric issue in the family, not family, for the mother. Then we can see that the grandparents, all the grandparents are frail and ill, so they are also struck through. Shaded. Next slide. So Mr. K, the child's father, has a stressful relationship with his siblings except Mrs. E. Mrs. E is the younger sister who contacted us. This is due to which they took a loan with their ancestral property for building a house there, even though the extended family still inquires about the child's condition. His father managed to get a visa to work in UAE, but he couldn't continue his job as his wife developed psychological disturbances as a result of absence, as well as his absence, as well as dealing with illness of the child by herself alone. As reported by the informant, she talks to herself, hears strange voices, it's like auditory hallucinations. She also exhibits poor sleeping patterns, sad mood, and is not performing well in household activities. The elder child in the family is about 12 years of age, and he is trying hard to help his mother in caregiving his brother. The middle child is 10 years old. She doesn't know how to take care of the struggle she is going through. Grandparents are getting old age pension, and this is the sole income of the family. However, the father is trying to move for a permanent job, and he has some hope in the future. So this is the ECOMAP representation of the family. The family is connected with the school of the other siblings. And the extended family is not very much supportive, so there is a stressful relationship relating to the property issues and all. SIT Hospital, they have a good connection in SIT Hospital. The patient's father's friends also helps them occasionally. And the aunt we spoke about before, the aunt E is in close contact with them. So it's a strong connection between them. And they don't have much connection with the religious group. So it is tenuous dotted dashed lines. This is socio-economic overview of the family. They live in a partially completed 2 BHK terrace house. Taken loan from private bank for building a house was necessary for them also. The hope that the father could continue his job in Gulf to repay it. Primary and the sole breadwinner is his father by doing coolie job. Ration card is BPL of pink color, and they receive rice and other things, but baby food, grains, vegetables, etc. are not included. The grandparents are getting old age pension, no financial support from anyone near and dear to them. Father was in Gulf for a year, but he quit his job due to the illness, and now he's occasionally doing coolie job. Other ill members of the family are not taking proper treatment for their illnesses due to their financial crisis. The treatment expenses are high, especially the medicine that are not available in SAT hospital. That costs around 4,500 rupees a month. Educational expenses of other siblings are also getting high. Now, regarding the psychological part, psychological assessment of the patient was not possible because this case was registered to through helpline. According to the family, he only opens his mouth and lip movement and shows that he is hungry. When we represent the family's condition in a total pain concept, we can see that the physical problem sufferings are limitation of movement. The patient is completely bedridden, ADL impacted. Cognitive impairment is there, life-threatening. It's a life-threatening disease. Also, multi-organ dysfunction is there. And psychological part, there are behavioral issues, irritability and crying spells, deprived mother's psychological well-being. And the social and socio-economic part, we have separated. They are separated from other family members and isolated. Neglected parenting towards the elder children, towards other children, and acceptance of society is low. Financial crises are there, unemployment is there, loan, education, treatment, and other expenses are concerns. Other ill members are there in the family. That's also another vulnerability. Then spiritual part, we have declined faith in life, no support from the religion. For future hope is also less. These are discussion points. How does the illness of the child impact the overall well-being of the family? What are some of the issues standing out for you? And what would you prioritize for the family? Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. If we can stop sharing screen, Raju. Okay, fine. Let's go back to the questions. So let's just take a minute for all of us to mull over these questions. How does the illness of the child impact the overall well-being of the family? There are obviously many, many different threads that are unraveling. And this is maybe a question for you individually. What are some of the issues that are really standing out for you? And what would you prioritize? What would you prioritize for the family? How does the illness of the child impact the overall well-being of the family? What are some of the issues standing out for you? What would you prioritize? You can choose to answer one or all three. So Raju, we can stop sharing the screen and let's just spend a few minutes with the group. Going over some of your reflections on this particular case. This is a real life case, by the way. Mother's well-being. Finance. Food and medicine. Mother's healthcare. And you can see that there is a bit of a, like a domino effect. There is hostility in the family. The husband doesn't have a job or he's looking for one. When he did find a job that was maybe going to help the family, then the wife couldn't manage on her own, which is difficult for her, obviously. And the mother's mental health issues obviously have an impact on the child as well as on the healthy siblings. So I'm assuming that mother's healthcare, mother's treatment are priority areas, right? That's the response. Okay. Yep. Mental health of siblings and mother. Job for the father. Yeah, always. So that's the thing, but unfortunately, and I think this is the case with every family, right? They need help in a variety of ways. But I think what's important for us as care providers is to prioritize it for ourselves, set these goals, because as you start achieving small goals, then things start getting better and better. Don't try and fix everything at once. It's not going to happen. Also be very aware of your capacity and your capability. What are you able to help with and what are you not? It's very important for us to acknowledge areas that are beyond our scope of support. It's very, very important. I'm just going to say that again. Know your boundaries and forgive yourself for not fixing every problem. Okay, so all of these different issues, they are like a jigsaw and they all add up. So if there's some kind of distress you can take away in any small way, it's going to have an impact on the entire puzzle. So be kind to yourself while you're trying to help other families out. That's really essential. And the importance of an interdisciplinary team also becomes obvious here. There are medical issues that physicians can solve and nurses can solve. There are mental health issues that counselors can come in for. There are social issues that social workers and community health workers can come in for. This is why teamwork is that much more important. No one of us can work with all these different problems. So that team spirit is also really important. So we'll stop with that for now. Emil, thank you again very much for presenting that case. Very complicated case, but represented clearly. Thank you very much. And I hope that you all have found at least one or two useful things in today's session. And please bear these little tools and tricks in mind as we go through the next few sessions as well. Please start using the Genogram and EcoMap. Have fun with it. It's a great tool. It can really, really make things a lot simpler, life a lot simpler. And it can also save a lot of paper, I'll tell you that. So thank you very much for your time. And we will see you after Onam.